Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
Karen, we begin with the latest in the criminal hush money trial of Donald Trump. Jury deliberations will resume this morning in Manhattan. We get the latest from Bloomberg Law host June Grosso.
Before resuming their deliberations, the jury will hear a readback of testimony of Michael Cohen, the prosecution's star witness, and David Pecker, the former publisher of the National Enquirer. The testimony concerns a Trump Tower meeting in 2015 that prosecutors say was central to a criminal conspiracy to boost Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. The jury has also asked to hear the judge's instructions again. In New York, June Grosso, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, June, thanks. Well, in overseas political news this morning, South Africa's ruling party looks set to lose its parliamentary majority. According to projections from the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, the African National Congress, or ANC, is on course to win 42% of the votes cast in yesterday's national election. The calculations are based on early tallies released by the South African Electoral Commission. Bloomberg's Jen Zabazaja says it points to a possible coalition.
There's a lot of uncertainty right now. The worst case scenario, and what some people were calling the doomsday scenario, is potentially the ANC, the ruling party, having to be in partnership with the populist EFF, which is very left-leaning party wanting to nationalize banks and also mines.
And that's Bloomberg's Zen Zabazaja, who notes that the ANC has held on to power since the end of apartheid 3 decades ago.
Well, Karen, let's turn back to markets now. Treasury yields are in the driver's seat for investors near their highest levels this year. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us with more. John?
Yeah, Nathan, the government's selling its debt, and you know what? The demand isn't all that great. Treasury's final auction of the week, a $44 billion sale of 7-year securities that reinforced a trend of lackluster demand that's pushing bond prices lower and the yields higher. Those higher yields weighing on stocks. Investors can also throw some Fed speak in the mix. The Atlanta Fed chief, Raphael Bostic, says he looks at the end of the year as the time when the Fed might actually be prepared to reduce interest rates. He was speaking at a conference in Atlanta. And we're going to end the week with an important piece of economic data, the Fed's preferred inflation gauge. Tomorrow's core PCE deflator expected to show an improving trend for inflation. The 2-year yield right now down a basis point at 4.96. I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, John, thank you. Well, plenty of banking news this morning. Management changes coming at UBS, and we go to London and get the latest with Bloomberg's Ewan Potts. Good morning, Ewan.
Karen and Nathan, a management shake-up at Switzerland's biggest bank. UBS is moving its investment bank head, Rob Karofsky, to run its US operation. And with Iqbal Khan, he'll jointly oversee the wealth business. Khan will also become president of the Asia-Pacific region. The moves reinforce the bank's goal of expanding in the United States, and it paves the way for an interesting succession race for the UBS top job. In London, I'm Ewan Potts, Bloomberg Radio.
Thanks, Ewan. Well, the guy who has the top job at Wall Street's biggest bank, Jamie Dimon, says he anticipates problems emerging in private credit that could lead to a political backlash. The warning comes as J.P. Morgan Chase and other lenders look to make increasing inroads into the $1.7 trillion private credit sector. Speaking at an industry conference, Dimon said he is particularly concerned about the risk to retail clients as they gain access to the booming asset class.
They have not been stress tested. Do people really fully understand what I said about interest rates affecting what these things are worth? Do they? And if a little old lady finds out that she can't get her money back, and there may have been disclosure there saying, this money's locked up for 5 years, but you know what? Retail clients tend to circle the block and call their senators and congressmen, and they could be held to pay.
Those comments from J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon come after he wrote in his annual shareholder letter that the private credit industry has yet to be tested by bad markets.
Well, Nathan, some of the country's biggest banks may have a blind spot when it comes to their exposure to commercial real estate. A new study shows the risk to their balance sheets grows by about 40% when you include credit lines and term loans to real estate investment trusts. REITs have faced challenges since the pandemic, with high borrowing costs and work from home threatening the long-term value of office buildings. The trusts are obligated to make large dividend payments each year, and they tend to draw down credit from banks when they're worried about redemptions. That's a concern for the researchers.
In company news, Karen, we're watching shares of Salesforce. They are plummeting by 16% in early trading. The company gave a sales outlook for the current quarter that missed estimates. More from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
The quarter fueled concerns of a growth slowdown at the software giant. Salesforce said revenue will increase about 8% to as much as $9.25 billion in the period ending in July. Analysts on average estimated $9.35 billion, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. Investors have been concerned about Salesforce's sliding sales growth over the past year as the company turned its attention to improving profit. In New York, Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Charlie, thank you. Well, on the flip side, shares of Palantir are up more than 2.5% this morning. The Army has awarded a $480 million contract to the company for work on a project called the Maven Smart System through 2029. The deal further extends Palantir's relationship with the military and makes use of the company's growing suite of artificial intelligence offerings.
In another move, Karen, the Biden administration's antitrust enforcers are hosting a major event on competition in artificial intelligence. But some of the biggest names in the industry aren't invited. We get the details from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
Google, Amazon, Meta, and Microsoft have raced to partner with leading AI startups, but they are absent from the workshop. So is NVIDIA. Its centrality to the global AI supply chain has sent its stock soaring. Instead, the workshop will bring together top venture capital firms along with enforcers from the U.S., the U.K., and European Union. Assistant Attorney General for Antitrust, Jonathan Cantor, says the speaker list was intentional and the workshop's goal is for a thoughtful conversation on AI. Antitrust enforcers across the world have become concerned that many of the most promising AI startups depend heavily on the dominant tech companies for their financing and infrastructure needs. Jeff Bellinger, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Jeff, thank you. And it's time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. And for that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. Harvey Weinstein may face new allegations of rape and sexual assault when the former Hollywood movie mogul is tried again in New York. It comes after a state appeals court tossed his 2020 conviction last month. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office says since the last trial, other women have disclosed being sexually assaulted by the defendant. Conservative Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito says he can't and won't recuse himself from January 6th related cases. It comes after reports about the flags that have been seen flying outside his homes. Alito told congressional lawmakers his wife is solely responsible for flying 2 flags associated with the baseless Stop the Steal movement on 2 of the family's properties. Loyola Law School professor Jessica Levinson.
These ethics codes are asking whether or not it might appear to the public like a judge possesses actual bias. You don't need to, in the words of the Supreme Court opinions, actually possess the bias, but it has to look like you might. Justice Alito is saying that's not going to happen.
Loyola Law School professor Jessica Levinson. The NYPD arrested and charged a man with a slew of hate crimes, including attempted murder, after allegedly trying to hit a group of Jewish teens with a car outside a yeshiva in Brooklyn. Several of them ran inside the yeshiva for safety. Police arrested 58-year-old Ashgar Ali from Brooklyn. A study by a group which ranks U.S. metro areas based on pedestrian deaths finds that it is at a 40-year high. The nonprofit Smart Group America blames roads designed to prioritize vehicle speed over pedestrian safety. Beth Osborne is the group's vice president of transportation.
We spent many years trying to speed up automobile traffic. The way departments of transportation have tried to do that is to make roads ever wider, and that alone creates safety challenges.
Beth Osborne with the SGA also says people of color are disproportionately impacted. COVID's after effects may reverberate for more than 3 years, often causing lingering pulmonary and gastrointestinal symptoms. That is according to a study of U.S. veterans. It is in the journal Nature Medicine. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it. With Bloomberg News Now, I'm Michael Barr, and this is Bloomberg, Karen.
All right, Michael Barr, thank you. It is time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update with John Stashower. John, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. The Yankees are in first place, and their Cy Young winning pitcher has yet to take the mound. Part of that is because the guy who replaced Garrett Cole in the rotation just might be this year's Cy Young winner. Luis Gil, superb again. Against the Angels, he went 8 innings, allowed only 2 hits, struck out 9. Didn't get a lot of support, but got enough. An Alex Verdugo home run in the 4th inning, and Anthony Volpe came up in the 7th.
This pitch line down the right field line. That's a fair ball. It's going to go all the way to the curved wall down the right field line. Volpe motors around it to second. He's going for 3. Here comes the throw to third. Volpe slide. It gets past third base. The throw goes into the camera well, and Volpe is going to be awarded home plate.
On WFAN, Yanks top the Angels 2-1. Heel is now 7-1. His ERA is under 2. At Citi Field, Mets and Dodgers were 3-3 in the 8th inning. LA scored 6 times, including the Shohei Ohtani home run. Dodgers finished the sweep 10-3. Mets have lost 15 of their last 19. Orioles beat the Red Sox 6-1. A grand slam for Gunnar Henderson. Nationals won 7-2 in Atlanta. The Phillies beat the Giants 6-1. Stanley Cup playoffs, Dallas won Game 3 after trailing 2-0. Edmonton won Game 4 after trailing 2-0. Oilers won 5-2, and the series is tied at 2, as is the case in the East. Setting the stage for a big Game 5 tonight at the Garden. Rangers and Panthers, the first conference final in 23 years to have had 3 straight overtime games. Open, Iga Swiatek's the top seed, the 2-time defending champ. Had to play 4-time Grand Slam winner Naomi Osaka in the second round. Osaka just back on tour after giving birth. She had a match point, but Swiatek won 7-6, 1-6, 7-5. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports, Karen and Nathan.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on Sirius XM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager. We're headed to day 2 of jury deliberations in former President Donald Trump's hush money trial in New York. Now, it's anybody's guess when the jury is going to come out with a verdict, but no matter how it turns out, this case is having a political impact. And for more, we are joined by Bloomberg News senior editor Bill Ferries. Bill, good morning. We did see some developments as the jury headed into the deliberation room, asking to review testimony about the August 2015 Trump Tower meeting with Michael Cohen and National Enquirer publisher, the former publisher, David Pecker. What does that tell you about where these deliberations could go?
Yeah, Nathan, it's very interesting that was really the first thing that the jury came back to the judge asking for a little bit more of a kind of a refresher on in terms of what happened. I mean, this was the meeting where David Pecker, the publisher of the National Enquirer, said that he agreed to help the Trump campaign by boosting Trump and his newspaper, criticizing his rivals, and basically buying and burying accounts of extramarital affairs as they came up. So this gets right into the heart of the payment to Stormy Daniels, and also the earlier payment to Karen McDougal, another a Playboy playmate. So very interesting. It was that was some of the earliest testimony in this case. So there's been speculation that maybe the jury just kind of wanted to get a reminder of what that testimony, what the details of that testimony are. But it's also, as the prosecutor said, a key event in their case against former President Donald Trump.
So we could have several more hours, if not several more days of jury deliberations. But we did hear something of a summation from the former president after the first day. Here's a little bit of what he had to say to reporters.
Mother Teresa could not beat these charges. These charges are rigged. The whole thing is rigged.
Mother Teresa could not beat the charges. What's the former president setting up for?
Well, he's he on the one hand will say that he thinks he's doing well, and the other hand that he thinks it's a rigged process. He has definitely made the case to his core supporters, particularly, that he thinks not just this case, but all of the cases against him are part of the a political process that's where the Democrats and his opponents have weaponized the judicial system, and that's going to be the message he takes if he's found guilty on any of these charges, or if things don't go his way. And it's something that quite a few, many people in his camp will agree with, and they'll rally around. So that's going to be the case. Now, if he is found guilty of this or any other case, there's going to be a big question of how much damage that does or doesn't do to him. He's got a strong base that's there, that's with him through thick and thin. So the question will be, what happens to those independent voters? What happens to those people who maybe don't like Joe Biden? Will they, do they avoid the election, or do they just do they vote for someone else? But yeah, this is the case that Trump has made throughout this process, that he is being unfairly targeted.
And I wonder what the president himself, President Biden, how he could react depending on how things go. I mean, he's towed a really fine line and really trying to avoid speaking pretty directly about what's going on in New York.
Yeah, it sounds like it's something that he has spoken more about in some of these less covered, fundraiser events, where he's been more openly critical of the president. I think, from the White House perspective, they don't want to be seen as, they don't want to play into that argument that Trump has made, that it's a political process, a political persecution. So I think they just want to let the courts speak for themselves. But on the campaign trail, you definitely see a president who's more interested in raising some of these issues before an electorate that is, still seems frustrated with the choices it has before it.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Today, your morning brief on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed at 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, SiriusXM, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.